Hey everybody with Parent ProTech, this is Joshua here, and I'm really excited for our conversation today. We have a special guest, the CEO of Troomi Wireless, Bill Brady, who's with us. And we at Parent ProTech, we've worked with multiple companies in this space of cell phones for kids, and really, Troomi is set apart. And I'm not saying that just because you're here, Bill. We say that even when you're not here. But they really very mission minded, and we just love what they built, how it grows with kids. It's versatile, it's customizable, but still accessible and easy enough for parents who are busy to use. So thank you for being with us today, Bill. Seriously, we're excited for this.
Joshua, great to be with you, and we appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
To begin with, I want to dive in a bit to Troomi's story, because the thing that really blows my mind is Troomi began in 2020, right?
Yeah, we incorporated in 2020 and really went to market in the fall of 2021. So we spent the first year building our product. And spent time on it to make sure that it was not just effective, but extremely easy to use. That was important to us.
Oh, it is. I got my Troomi right here, actually. And I want to come back to, the product specifically, but also your story. I mean, I'm intrigued by it and also connect with it a bit because I hear you study political science, and I did too. And one of my coworkers here at Parent ProTech, Brock, one of our founders, he also, we have a background kind of in politics, but then here we are. And it's kind of hard to see the thread from there to here, but even for you too, with PR, with working in the agency world, could you kind of give us some of the backstory from there to founding, your own company in this space?
So I did start in my freshman year of school. I thought I'll back up a step. I'm from Canada originally.
Love it.
My plan was always to be the Prime Minister of Canada. That's what I wanted to do. And so in my freshman year, my freshman year, I studied political science, but as I got into school, switched to public relations. And that's what I got my degree in, and then got a master's degree in business. But really spent 20 years in the agency world. And I think it was partially, I always had a sensitivity about the effect of technology on us as humans. Mm-hmm. Even in school, I wrote a term paper at one point about the dehumanizing effects of technology. And that was before everyone had cell phones, and it was for social media. But I've always had that sensitivity. And that sensitivity was really enhanced in my career as a marketer. I ran a couple of marketing agencies and saw firsthand the absolute power of some of these platforms, and frankly, some of the scary side of it. As consumers, we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes and how powerful these things really are. And so as my wife and I were raising our kids, we had a lot of conversation. I say we still are. We are. But in that process, we've had a lot of conversations about what exactly do we want to do with technology, and what is the right technology to introduce into our home, and when and how. And we've always been kind of sensitive about that.
So at Parent ProTech, we talk about in all of our videos and content, the good, the bad, and the ugly of technology. Because we realize, like you're saying, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of, it can be harnessed different ways.
I'm glad you say it like that. I always am quick to correct anyone who would think that I am or Trumi is anti-technology. Just the opposite. There's so much absolute benefit for kids with technology. It just has to be introduced in a purposeful, intentional way in age-appropriate steps. That's what we're trying to help families do.
Yeah, and you said it, and I want to get to it now, the age-appropriate steps. So your parent portal and the whole Kids Smart operating system, it really is designed where if you want your kid to have the most basic foundational phone that has, little functionality, it can do that, but it can also grow with them, and you can enable different apps. So kind of let us into that. What does that look like?
Yeah, that was really our goal, was
Yeah.
to create the phone that grows with your kids. So imagine starting a younger child, and that age is really different for every family, and
Yeah.
frankly, different for
Mhm.
every child.
Yeah.
Uh, but let's say, for instance, you're starting with a 9-year-old,
Hmm.
and you want that 9-year-old to get their first phone so they can reach you when they're at their sports or other events, and you want to just have that contact line with them. Well,
Yeah.
9, you might want them to have contact with you, but not with the rest of the internet.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you
Yeah.
could start
Probably
a
not.
start a you could start a younger child with a very limited experience of talk and text only. That's it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then really based on their specific needs and on their demonstrated maturity, graduate them into additional features and functions.
Yeah.
I'm always, I go to my way to say that should be an intentional decision.
Hmm.
I don't ever
Okay.
recommend giving kids a cell phone or more functionality just because their friends are doing it. Make it an
Yeah.
intentional
Yeah.
decision. So at 10 years old, some kids might need more functionality because of their individual circumstances or because of their exceptional maturity.
Hmm.
And they've
Hmm.
demonstrated that they want to use the device responsibly, that they can make good decisions, they would rather be outside playing soccer and not just glued to a screen. You
Yeah.
really have to
Hmm.
to fit each kid's personality. But as that kid, as their needs and maturity increase, decide, okay, now it's time to introduce picture messaging and group
Yeah.
text. And now I want to introduce a safe web browser.
Hmm.
Because that's one of the decisions you can make. You can say on a Trumi device, no internet access. Or
Yeah.
we've also built what is a safe web browser where you as a parent can determine ahead of time inside the parent portal what domains are available to a child. And you can even turn on, and a lot of parents will turn it on and then turn it off based on a specific need a child has, but you can even turn on Chrome
Yeah.
and and then turn it off and go back to that safe web browser. Bottom line is you can custom fit the experience to that individual
Mm.
child, really culminating in deciding what apps to give them from
Yeah.
within a suite of apps that we've curated for safety.
I know I've heard you say before that when you were, or when the process is when you're determining what apps you have, that social media is, those apps are immediately cut, and then there's this vetting process for other apps.
Yeah, we don't do social media. That's just
Yeah.
a line that we draw because so many of the problems start there. That's often a kid's first introduction to pornography.
Yeah.
It's often the route that predators try to use to groom children. It's also the biggest source of stress, anxiety, and depression among young people today. And this isn't Bill's opinion or Trumi's
No.
opinion.
No.
This is the Surgeon General of the United States.
Yeah.
This is the American Psychological Association. This is the American Pediatric Association.
Yeah. We see it.
Everyone,
We see it every week. Yeah.
yeah. And as a society, we're having this realization social media isn't for kids. And even
Mm.
you now see even some states putting
Yeah.
restrictions on when kids can use social media. So yes, social media is out. And then after, the vetting after that is obviously, is there access to pornography or
Yeah.
violent content? If there is, it's out. Then we also look really hard at, backdoor channels to unintended communication. For
Hmm.
example, is there a hidden web browser inside an app
Yeah.
where kids could get to negative content? You'd be surprised at how often that's the case.
Hmm.
So if we can't control it, then we say no
Yeah.
to that. Um, and it's really trying to eliminate any option for a predator to come in without you knowing, right under your nose, and strike a relationship with your kid. We don't want that to happen.
How many apps are currently available? And you might not know, but I know it's continuously growing.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I looked this morning.
Wow. Okay.
I don't always know the answer to that question. As of this moment, it's 165, and that's constantly growing, like you said. And we really keep a running list of requests from our community, and then prioritize the apps that we're vetting just based on the volume of requests, and have people on our team that's their job, that they work through those app requests and that vetting process, and then our tech team does the integration.
Yeah. So the neat takeaway here is, if a parent's watching and they, their child has some interest that, and there's this certain type of app that they really would love to see, they can reach out. They can submit that to your team.
Absolutely. And some of those are just really practical apps too. Like we've had some parents that have said, we love everything about Troomi, but now my son or daughter has a high school job, and there's a really common payroll management app that a lot of fast food companies use. They need that in order to keep using the Troomi phone. So, we make that available.
That's something I wouldn't even think about, but it's useful. Yeah, practically useful. So I really want to lean into also your role as a parent, because on our team at Parent ProTech, we have parents and educators in different perspectives. Me personally, I'm married with a dog, and we've only been married for 3 years, so we're kind of holding out for kids, hopefully for another couple years or so. But all that to say, you're a parent or a dad of five, right?
5 kids. Our oldest is 19, and our youngest is 7. So we're still in the thick of this. Like every family in America, we're in the middle of dealing with all these questions ourselves in our own household. So I think about it all day at work, and I go home and think about it there too.
You are very much in the fight, from a personal and professional standpoint. So a moment ago, you mentioned we were talking about age, and I think that's a question we get all the time. What is the age for my child to have a phone? What is the age for social media? And in many cases, I think we found that, like you mentioned, there's never a concrete age. It's based on so many circumstances and factors at home, with your child, with your family, what their needs are. But I'm curious with your kids, when did they start asking about a phone? Did they start, or when did you allow them to have a phone?
With our oldest, so our oldest got into, she reached kind of the age before I was in this industry. She was 12, and at 12 she was babysitting for us, and she was babysitting for other people. And so many families don't have landline phones anymore. As she was starting to babysit, like we very quickly realized, well, she can't babysit if she doesn't have a phone. That wouldn't be safe. I went and got her, they're actually kind of hard to find now, but I got her a flip phone.
Oh, wow. That's a relic. That's a relic.
At the age of 12. And, and so in our family, 12 that's kind of become the age, and it's not a hard, fast rule. If I had a child who wasn't ready at 12 and I thought that they were just going to be a screen zombie, I would wait. And likewise, if I had a child that seemed really ready before 12, and there was a legitimate, purposeful need, then I would consider it before 12 too. But that's kind of generally the area in our family that we've done. I know other folks where their family situation is different. Let's say mom and dad are not in the same home. And, I see lots of situations where kids have to have phones at younger ages, so they can talk with mom when they're staying with dad, or vice versa, right? or kids that are involved in so many activities, and they may be younger than that, but the parents have to have a way to
Yeah.
contact them. So we see that too.
With your children, have you had, or have they ever come to you and had the conversation of, hey, Dad, I have friends who have this, and either I want that, or, why do I not have access to that? Have you encountered that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think every parent has, right?
Yeah. And how do you navigate it? Maybe that's the better question.
So we've really focused on why.
Okay.
I think it's really hard to, as a parent, to say to a child, no. And I'm the parent, the answer is no, and that's the way it is in our house, period.
Yeah.
End of story. That's not a way to have these conversations. And I'll give my oldest daughter as an example. She's 19. Um, I have never had a shouting match with her.
Wow.
And even in regard to all these issues around technology, where as a teenager, all her friends had, the Snapchat and Instagram, and these were their primary modes of communication. So yeah, absolutely, there were times that she would say, hey, do you think it's time? Do you think it's time I could get Snapchat? But it never escalated into a rift between us, because we had so many conversations along the way about why we're holding off on social media. And I don't think that is a conversation that you should have with your kids. I think that's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
So, for example, every time I see a news article about a kid being groomed on Roblox, or about someone meeting up with a predator that they thought was a 15-year-old boy, and it turns out to be some 15-year-old creep. Every time there's one of those stories in the news, I share it with my kids, age appropriately. So I share it with my older kids and just say, hey, check out this terrible story. This is why we're holding off on these things. And my kids, that's been enough for them to get it. And I actually had at one point my two older daughters, this is a couple years ago, but they were looking at all of the stress and the drama and the anxiety that their friends were going through because of social media. At one point, my girls actually came to us and said, hey, thank you, Mom and Dad. We get it. And thank you.
Wow.
But that only happens because it's been this ongoing, respectful, very respectful conversation in which we're always expressing our trust in them, but saying it's these other folks, it's these 500,000 online predators that we don't trust.
That's it.
You say it's ongoing. Is it like a mealtime, bedtime conversation? Is there a set space for it, or it's just whenever it arises, you just let it happen naturally?
We just try and let it happen naturally. That said, we do have a custom, I guess you could call it, a habit in our family. We try to spend a little bit of time with each of the kids at bedtime. And, that could be, 20 minutes of bedtime stories with our little boys. It could be sitting on our teenage girls' bedroom floors and just talking for a few minutes. And so those are also great moments to just connect, see how they're doing. It's most important just to keep a dialogue about everything open. And then it's easy to have these conversations. They don't have to be difficult conversations.
I have some of the best memories from conversations with my mom in the car after she'd pick me up from school, and we just talk. And I remember even getting into some topics and conversations that, if we hadn't had that space, probably wouldn't have otherwise have come up. But I love what you're saying about just keeping the door open to that. I love that. So with your older kids,
specifically, you have a 19-year-old And then what's the second oldest? Or how old is
She's 16 now.
Okay,
16
16.
and then 14.
Okay. Oh, wow. So as they kind of graduate from the phones with controls to, maybe being on social media or
graduating to open, just openness and having everything at their fingertips. How have you eased restrictions or had those conversations to prepare them for what's next?
It's been a lot of expectation setting, so I'll use my 16-year-old daughter as an example. So her name is Jenna. She's 16, and we just graduated her from Troomi to an iPhone.
Oh, wow.
And that said, we still control the apps that are available to her, and she knows that we're not doing social media. And I think in Jenna's case, I hope she doesn't listen to this. In Jenna's case, we always joked that she had the maturity of a 30-year-old when she was 13.
Wow. Yeah.
She's an old soul and extremely responsible, manages her time, manages herself.
Hey, I hope Jenna listens to this. This is this is great.
The old soul part. I think she would. Old soul. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
She'd be embarrassed. In her case, hey, we decided she was ready. I have other kids where their personality wise, they don't have that level of maturity, and the transition will probably happen a little later. But even with Jenna, it's we're still not doing the social media stuff, but she does now manage a browser by herself. She's got an open web browser, and at this point has gone through the preparation and training and experience so that she's making good decisions and she's not going after the negative content and everything else. That said, we still check in on her activity, which I think is a good idea for all parents to do with all their kids.
Yeah. Now now that she's kind of graduated to the iPhone, has she thanked you? Does she, how does she feel about how it's all played out? What would she say?
I think she appreciates the fact that we had Trumi as the preparation ground. Yeah. And that's really that's part of our mission. So it's not just keeping kids safe. That's definitely the number one priority, especially when you're thinking of the younger kids that they don't have the knowledge or experience to make good decisions, right? But we want to make sure that kids are developing a responsibility and a discipline and a preparation for the future. Part of our mission is to help kids thrive and be confident and have a balanced relationship with technology. And I think Jenna has recognized that. She's because of the way we did things incrementally, now she's going to be a senior in high school this fall. So now she's starting her senior year. She recognizes, okay, I've demonstrated the maturity. I'm not going to abuse it. I'm not going to abuse that trust. And she's been great.
I think you've done it the right way, because it's a fine line that we navigate too, and working with schools and parents, because you don't want to keep things so limited that as soon as they have freedom, they go to the opposite end of the spectrum and resent you as parent. But also, you want to set them up for success progressively. So
I had a conversation with some parents, and they were using another solution.
Okay.
That is locked down to talk and text only, and their son was 3 months shy of his 18th birthday.
Oh,
and he was still using that solution, and I was a little bold, and I pushed back on them a little bit, and I said, if you've not given him an incremental ability to take on more responsibility and develop some discipline, he's going to be addicted to pornography within 2 months of when he actually gets a phone, whether he's 18 or 21. If he hasn't gone through the process of step by step taking on the discipline and responsibility, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Wow.
Whew. So what about on the other side of the spectrum? I know some we encounter have given 13-year-olds iPhones. No restrictions, have fun. There you go. What would you say to them? Because I think the challenge also to navigate is once you've given all this freedom, it gets really difficult to try to sometimes rein it back in without that resentment building. So would you have any wisdom or insight for that parent?
You're right. It definitely is a tougher situation then. I talked to one of our moms who she had a couple kids on iPhones, didn't like the direction it was headed, and got rid of the iPhones and got them Trumi phones. And I said, isn't that hard? And her response was, I don't care. Now that I understand, I don't care. Yeah. And let me share 2 stories to go with that. I'll make them quick. But one came from actually a 14-year-old girl wrote us a letter.
Oh.
And she wrote a letter. She said, dear Mr. Brady, excuse me, dear Mr. Brady, my name is so-and-so. I live in New York City, and I have to tell you my story. I got into trouble with my iPhone, and my mom took it away. And for 2 months, I didn't have a phone. And when my mom decided it was time for a second chance, she gave me a Trumi phone. And when she explained that it wasn't going to have social media, I thought I was going to die. And then she said, and this is the best part. She said, but now that I've been using Trumi for 2 months, I have to tell you, I didn't know I could be so happy. Thank you. And that was from a 14-year-old girl.
From a 14-year-old. That's incredible.
And once she'd experienced life with the technology she needed, but without all these distractions and the comparison culture and the fear of missing out culture, the I'm not good enough culture that you get on social media, she realized, wow, I can really live life now. So that's one data point. Another story is tragic. And this comes from a gentleman I've known for a lot of years. And when he found out what we were doing with Trumi, he got teary-eyed. And he said, where were you 3 years ago? And I said, tell me what's going on. You've clearly got a story here.
Yeah.
And he talked about the process he'd gone through with his son was 12 at the time, and they hadn't given him a phone, and he was pestering and pestering and pestering and pestering. So they finally got him a flip phone. And then he pestered and pestered and pestered and pestered for an iPhone. And on a whim, my friend, this gentleman, for the boy's 13th birthday, got him an iPhone. And and he said, Bill, in a matter of 6 months, we went from having the sweetest family life to an absolute living hell. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, it started with sending inappropriate pictures. First, he got addicted to pornography on the internet.
Yeah. That
turned into sexting, and was sending inappropriate pictures and receiving inappropriate pictures with minors, which it's wrong in every sense of the word, right?
Yeah.
And then he said, and then through social media, he was contacted by a drug dealer. He got addicted to marijuana. And most recently, we found out that he's been dealing drugs in the church parking lot during Sunday school.
Oh.
And I expressed my sympathy, if you will, and just listened and tried to understand. And then I just asked him, I knew him well enough that I could just ask the hard question. And I said, why on earth did you not have the parental controls on that iPhone enabled?
Yeah.
And he said, Bill, I thought I did. And I've learned from talking to kids themselves. My partner, Dave, and I, we spend a lot of time talking to customers and really trying to understand the kids. And we've learned from young people that there are hackers in every high school. Where if you show up to school with your iPhone and $100, you give it to the hacker, and at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want, and your parents have no clue.
Exactly.
And so that's the caution. I mean, whether you've gone down the road or not with an iPhone, be aware of the risks. If you think it is too late to dial it back, be absolutely sure that you do understand the parental controls, that your kids haven't hacked them. Just be so cautious. It's a tough thing.
I think it is important to remember that the iPhone wasn't built for kids. And even just last week, we were re-recording some of our content on the parental settings within the iPhone. And we try to answer different questions and, really highlight what you need to set up. And once we were done, and now that we're looking at editing everything down, I'm like, it's still going to be probably 45 minutes worth of content. And this is in the details of saying you need to enable this, disable this, tweak this, change this, look out for this. And still we found so many workarounds. And so it's like you can do all the right things with an iPhone, and still your child will likely find a way around these restrictions. So I mean, those stories are powerful, but I think it's the truth. It's so real.
I believe in the inherent goodness of kids. I really do. And we try to have a very real but positive outlook on all this stuff. And so you might think, hey, I can trust my kid not to find those workarounds. And you very well may have the most trustworthy son or daughter. But they're also surrounded by other kids who have these hacks. And it turns into you can't do such and such. Let me show you. Oh, you can't do that? That's lame. Let me do this for you. So regardless of how well-intentioned your child is and how much trust you have in that relationship, that doesn't mean they're not going to be surrounded by people that are taking them places you don't want them to go.
They may not have it at home, but they go to school and they see it. Yeah. Well, when it comes to this field, it's all the time changing. And I think that's the difficult part, especially for us, is we're trying to monitor platforms, apps, devices. And so I want to get your input on that as well. Like, it's the technology, social media, all the apps that you're working with, they're constantly evolving. How do you, as dad and CEO of Troomi Wireless, how are you keeping up or trying to keep up with all of this?
So I read a ton, and I have the advantage as a parent. I have the advantage of I'm doing this for a living, so I'm always in it and just naturally staying up on it. To parents out there, I'd say find a trusted, reliable source. What you guys do at Parent ProTech, we absolutely applaud, because you're doing the work to help provide parents with the knowledge and the empowerment and the understanding to tackle these issues. So find that trusted source and avail yourself of the content that other people have already done the work to figure out. Like in your example that you just shared with managing iPhones. So I would absolutely give that advice to parents. It's overwhelming to try and do it by yourself.
We spend every day we have news alerts turned on for every platform and app, and still when we're trying to navigate some of these things, I'm like, I can't even begin to imagine if I'm a parent who's busy with kids, job, everything else going on. How in the world am I expected, or am I even going to begin to track some of these things? So again, that's why we love Trumi so much, because it's, we're in the fight together.
100%.
So Trumi, right now you have the 2 devices, right? 2 phones.
Yes.
And then the different tiers of plans. But
I mean, I'm curious, you're 3 years in, what's next? What's next for Trumi?
Joshua, all I can say is some very exciting stuff.
I love it. I love
I'm
it.
not ready to open that bag yet.
Yeah.
But we've got some stuff in the works that is very, very exciting.
Cool.
Yeah, just keep watching.
Yeah. Well, everyone, Trumi Wireless on social media. We know where to look. But we've kind of spent the whole call in this thread of talking about Trumi, talking about what you built. But if you had to sum it up, if you had to say in a matter of a sentence or two, why Trumi, what would you say?
It's really the safest and easiest platform, most flexible for providing an environment where your kids can have what they need without the garbage they don't need. And there's a big philosophical difference between Trumi and other solutions out there. On one end of the spectrum, you've got some stuff out there that's so locked down that it's not practical and it's not preparing kids for the future. We don't think that's the way to go, because technology does have so many benefits and it will be part of our kids' lives. It has to. So that one end of the spectrum isn't practical. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got the philosophy that says, hey, give your kids everything, but we'll monitor it and we'll tell you if there's a problem. And I don't like that. Like, I don't want to know after the fact if a predator has been talking to my kid. I don't want to know after the fact if my kid's, gotten into pornography. I don't want those things to happen. So philosophically, we're right in this place of, let's provide safety with flexibility to custom fit the solution to each of your kids' needs. It's empowering for parents, it's empowering for kids, and it prepares them for the future.
I love it. Well, and if anyone watching wants to go check out Trumi's website, you want to buy a device, your team's given us an exclusive discount code at ProTech, PROTECH.
Be sure to use that when checking out. But Bill, thank you for your time and for your work. I said it at the top and I'll say it again. We love what your team is doing. We love what you guys are about. And I think if there's one phone that can, fit the needs of a 10-year-old and an 18-year-old, it's Trumi. I mean, it really is. So thank you. And we're excited to see what's ahead.
Thank you, Joshua. Great to be with you today.